Hi, welcome everybody to Strive's Summit Podcasts. I'm your host, Alex Hanna, and with me today I have Abarna. And Abarna, I don't want to murder your last name, so please go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Will do. So my name is Abarna Krishnakumar. It's, two little names put together. Um, so I am originally Canadian. I've been there my entire life. I moved to the United States going on soon to be 5 years. Been in the BIM space for about a decade now in different aspects of the industry, from the design side now on the construction side. So getting to see different aspects of the industry and meeting many wonderful minds throughout this journey. So looking forward to kind of sharing that experience with everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we connected maybe a year and a half ago, and then I missed you at RCN. I was going to come talk to you and tell you everything about what's going on, but we didn't have a chance to connect. So I'm happy you're on the podcast now. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
I want to talk about more. Have you seen any latest tech or software you've seen lately that's like really bringing a buzz around, or you think that's really awesome? You know, a lot of stuff that we talk about is kind of stuff that we kind of throw around, like, oh, a 3D model and things like that. But we kind of take that for granted, and we do really cool stuff all the time. So I don't know. Is there anything out there that kind of stood out lately that you've been kind of playing with or seen?
Honestly, there's so much out there that we try one and there's 10 that came out, and it's just that's how we met. Yours is one of the
Yeah.
awesome tools that are out there. And depending on the side of the industry. So each firm that I've been with over the last 10 years, since it was from a different angle, there's been different software that I've had the privilege of being able to use, whether it's the core tool itself or plugins. Um, Shout out to all the companies that are creating those awesome plugins, because without you guys, we can't get things done. And right now, the newest tool that I'm actually using, it's not that new. I came across it about 7, 8 years ago in a previous life, but it's kind of re-emerging. I'm just getting introduced to Assemble. It's starting to become more and more popular from what I hear. So I'm looking forward to that. And on top of the usual tools that we use in the BIM space, there's just the project management tools that are out there that are definitely helping out, um, whether it's in separate silos or through behind the scene connections, thanks to all the developers out there, just kind of being able to grab the APIs and, connect the dots and just bring everybody into one space, which is ultimately what BIM is at the end of the day, right? So we want
Right.
to be able to utilize all these tools out there. And honestly, there's just so much from the PM side. If, there's the Trellos, the Monday.coms, to if we come on the BIM side, we've got um, the various plugins, those who are working with the MEP side of things. You've got Atcore, and then you've got prefabrication tools out there that are making our lives so much easier, saving hours and hours on end, from Allied BIM, Evolve, you name it. It's just, there's so much. And depending on what the output is, or the desired output is, it's definitely a wide range of tools that we can utilize. And I don't know if you've seen those images where it's just this large Venn diagram of so many different tools that we use
Oh,
in the BIM space. It's just constantly getting bigger.
I've
Um,
I've seen that. It's called like the history of BIM or something, and then it shows the big tools and then all the offshoots of the big
yeah,
tools. And oh man, I tried to follow those one time and then I gave up. I was just
there's
it's
just too
taking too much
much.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So real quick, Assemble is not a common one. It's been around for a while, but you're getting into it now. So what kind of brought you into Assemble? What's so amazing about Assemble that's kind of keen and caught your eye?
Initially, when I first came across it, we were trying to figure out a way to be able to pull bombs from Revit.
Mm-hmm.
So in my previous lifetime, I was working for an engineering consulting firm, and our engineers wanted to be able to extract information from Revit and, through those schedules, but then have a two-way communication. But it was very clunky. The method we had was very clunky because a lot of us were quite novice in the BIM space. I had just joined the firm at the time when they were trying to figure out how to migrate from AutoCAD into Revit, let alone push it to beyond 3D. So Assemble kind of came across our ways, but it didn't quite get what we needed to get done at the time. And lo and behold, several years later, it's come across in a different lifetime altogether. It's come across our field again, but I've literally just got the license today. So um, stay tuned. I'll keep you posted on how things go, but I hear great things about it. I haven't had the opportunity of being able to check out what's in there yet, but
Mhm.
I hear great things. My boss is a huge fan. There was a demo that he did earlier today. I was like, okay, this is definitely way more than what I remember from years ago.
Awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of products that come out now, like is it Tandem? Project Tandem. That's a new one coming
Mm-hmm.
out for like
Yep.
facility maintenance, and they're making a comeback.
Yep.
I know that's something that we've been kind of where I'm at BIM we're kind of working through something like that with Tandem, and so that's exciting when that stuff's coming out. So Abarna, I want to know your story on where you started from. You got your inspiration to um, where you're today, and how you're such a prominent like figure in women in BIM. I love that. So why don't you start from the very beginning, and I want to know what inspired you, what got you into this industry.
Oh man, it didn't even know this industry existed a long time ago. Let's put it that way. Let's start there. I didn't even think to join this industry until it was kind of too late um, in my 12th grade. Up until, so in Canada, December prior to the year you're supposed to graduate from high school is when we start applying to colleges and universities. So literally up until about a week or two before applications were to go in my mind, I thought, I'm going to be a teacher. Elementary school, high school, whatever it is, I'm going to be a teacher. And my parents decided, you know what, let's go meet a family friend. Their daughter graduated from teachers college. She's working as a teacher. Let's ask her what her experience was like. And I thought, yeah, that's great. This will get me more excited, and maybe I'll do a double major. Do teachers college concurrently with something else. If I didn't have that conversation, I would have probably went into the teaching stream. Since I did have that conversation, I came across the basic statement that is said all across North America, which is it's tough to be a teacher. Once you finish school, it's tough to find a job. And when you do, it's grueling. And I thought, well, the grueling, sure, that comes with many careers out there. But the tough to find a job is what threw me. And I thought, well, I don't want to be part time for a decade before I can actually figure things out. And so time's running out. I got to apply to college, university. The later I apply, the less likely I'm going to get into programs because they fill up pretty quick. And so here I am stuck. Meanwhile, her sister was in chemical engineering, and she said, well, what subjects are you good at? And I said, math and physics. And she said, engineering it is. Didn't think anything else of it. So I thought, you know what? Okay, whatever. So I applied, got in, did it, hated it, transferred, did something else, hated that too, did another transfer. Then I came into architectural technology, and it was fun. The people I came across were people either coming back to school as second career. So there's a thing in Canada called second career. If your initial career doesn't pan out and you're unemployed for some time, or you got injured on the job preventing you from going back to school, or sorry, going back to work in that industry, you can apply for government grants to send you to school at a college level, which is the equivalent of community college in the United States, and do
Okay.
a 2, maybe 3 year program um, to get you back up on your feet. And you'll get the full grants. Your school's paid for, your textbooks paid for, even you might get some grants that'll cover some bills, so that most folks usually have a family and they've got a lot of responsibilities. And so this kind of helps them out. And I got to meet some lovely friends. To this day, I stay in touch with a couple of them that came back to school because they got injured on the job. One was a carpenter, one was in the construction field, both of which got injured and just couldn't go back. And so it's a wide range of experiences of folks coming together, whether we're directly from high school, bounced around like myself or coming back for a second chance well into their adulthood. And so as we were working together, there was a different type of dynamic, which we're basically seeing in our industry right now, which is a lot of bright minds coming together to provide different types of input. And I got a taste of that and I loved it. It wasn't something I experienced when I was doing engineering or urban planning. It's just what those two were great, maybe for other people, but not for me. But this environment, the people I loved, the subjects I enjoyed finally after a long time. And then I took a Revit course. And that's what paved the way for my current path. If it wasn't for that one course, who knows? I might have just been, I don't even know what I would have been, but it was Revit that changed the ball game for me. And so when I had time on my hands, I would push my bounds. I would try different things. And we had two courses for Revit. We had like an introductory and then an advanced. In the advanced course, we were learning about Revit families. And so our instructor is like, okay, your biggest assignment is going to be find an object and create that family. I had classmates who created simple water bottles. You can just do the revolve and you're done. Me, I'm the weirdo. I go to the IKEA website, find the funkiest light fixture, and created that because
Yeah.
I complicate things, apparently. My husband tells me all the time, stop overcomplicating it. There's an easy way to do things. So doing that, I had a lot of fun. And through that program, I got to network. I had the privilege of being able to network with many different people through different volunteer experiences. And I came across my soon-to-be supervisor who came to find out my ambition and my intrigue with Revit. And so a few months before graduation, she's like, finish school and you've got a job with us.
Oh,
And so
wow.
that's how I got into the engineering consulting firm. And it worked out beautifully. Did I do architecture? No, not really. I got thrown into process piping right from the get-go. Never heard of it. We didn't do any MEP modeling of any kind in school, so whole other ballgame. Their thing was, and I'm so happy that they did it, and many other companies are still doing it, which is you've got the software knowledge, we've got the technical knowledge, we'll teach you the technical, you teach us the software. And we'll be able to have that symbiotic relationship. And so from there, I worked there for 5 years, started off as a BIM modeler, got to learn the different disciplines and worked with so many incredible people and got into a BIM coordination role where I got to now help set up the company standards. And they had offices across the East Coast. And so worked with people virtually, set up training programs. It was so much fun. It was a lot of work, but it was so much fun. And I think that company, working at that company is what paved the way for what I'm doing even today at my day job. And so from there, I got burned out, unfortunately, because I wasn't backfilled. My previous role was still open. I had the title of BIM coordinator, but I was technically a BIM manager. So I'm wearing three hats, working with multiple offices, working with multiple departments among the different offices.
All too much of a familiar story. Yep.
Yep. And so I got burned out. And so I had to take a break and I left the company for something that was basically 60% less work to a point where there wasn't enough for them to give to me to keep me going. So I would try and find things to do. And so it was an electrical contracting firm. So now it's completely different. I went from the design side now to an electrical contractor, and they were working on wind farms. Whole other ballgame from water, wastewater to electrical. Started dabbling in AutoCAD electrical. They barely used it. And they're like, what do we do? So I'm here setting up palettes, templates, title blocks, you name it. And I still had a lot of time on my hands. So then I would ask my boss, hey, is there anything else for me to do? And he's like, well, we need a SharePoint. Okay, cool. So started working on that. And I still had a lot of time on my hands. And so like learning different tools that part of the industry was utilizing, which was very intriguing because now I'm getting introduced to software outside the Autodesk environment. I was only there for about 4 months because my first opportunity down in the United States presented itself. It was a startup firm in San Francisco, and they were looking for somebody. Oh, I just remembered. I forgot a whole job in between.
I want to
I
hear
was
it.
I was a part-time professor in the evenings for a majority of my time of my career while I was in Canada. So I created Revit courses, a whole certificate program for a college there, and the students ranged from current university students that were at schools that didn't have Revit programs but were expected to learn it on their own time. I thought that was extremely unfair to them because they're architectural schools too. So that was weird. Now they have it. Back then they didn't. So those students would come to me. I had superintendents coming to me, architects who started off at the drafting board who came, um, engineers who came. So a wide range of students, huge backgrounds. Collectively they probably had over 100 years of experience, and I'm here like, wow, I shouldn't be teaching you. You should be teaching me.
Right, right.
Um, so the teaching experience, the BIM coordination experience, the experience of setting up projects and all that all came together to get me my first opportunity here in San Francisco, where I was actually a QA tester for a startup that created a plugin for Revit. And it was on the modular construction side of the industry. So that was a whole new experience. Now I'm on the software side. I'm not designing or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but I was using my design knowledge or uh, modeling knowledge to be able to do that. And then as we were working with clients, we would then, the teaching came into play, the setting up standards came into play. So it was all kind of coming together beautifully. And I thought, this is going to be a huge change. Moving to a different country is not easy.
Never done it.
And
I moved across the country, but never to a different country. So
you're starting from scratch all over again, from trying to find a place to live where they ask you for a background check and a credit score. Got nothing. So that if it wasn't for my husband, I don't know what I would have done, but managed to find a place within, I think, like 4 days of moving here. Lived out of a hotel for a little bit, had no furniture. So it was just like 1 month of trying to figure things out, not knowing anybody. 6 months later, pandemic hits. We're working from home, right? And so that's an interesting ordeal too, but fell into, I like my husband and I fell into a trap of just like millions of other people, overworking because we're at home.
right.
We're
You're
just like,
sick, but
another,
you can get on. Yeah.
yeah, or it's, I'm not going anywhere. Another 5 minutes, another half an hour. What's the big deal? Next thing you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
8 p.m. But it was an amazing experience and got to see a different side of our industry, which is the software side. And I have a huge appreciation for IT folks across the board because it's not easy. One little spelling mistake and the whole thing's broken. And having to go through thousands of lines of code just to find one little thing, it can take days, if not even longer. And different programming styles coming together, it can break a tool so quickly. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't understand what's going on. I'd think, what's the big deal? Why can't they fix this tool? This is trash, and kind of move on. But having been on the other side, I get it. I understand why it takes the time. So I stopped taking the behind the scene folks for granted, and understanding that communication is everything. As a client, whenever we see something buggy, instead of freaking out, just if you can, recreate it, record it, send it back to that team because it's going to better the tool at the end of the day because they can recreate that bug. I'm just putting it out there so that hopefully other folks understand and don't, chalk off all the amazing new tools that are out there.
Yeah, I was, when I was working in Ally, I was part of a team to kind of help organize the best I could. And I was working with Alton at the time. You know, definitely understand that developing is a struggle. And I see the memes all the time of that one colon or parenthesis that's off, or yeah. So I get it. And I definitely have the same mindset you do of like, let's give it some time.
Yeah.
They got to work through some stuff,
Yeah.
especially for a
Every
larger
tool that
program.
we've used, every tool that we've used was brand new at some point or other, and they were
Mm-hmm.
all hiccupy at some point or other. That's a word. But they've all grown to be as successful as they are because folks were able to kind of work with them and break it in advance and fix it so that others don't experience that same issue.
Right.
So from there, unfortunately, like many other companies, I had a little bit of a break because the pandemic made us take a break. And this opportunity here in Phoenix came where they required us to relocate. And we thought, this is cool. Let's do it. Came out here, haven't looked back, still in Phoenix. So enjoying it very much. It was a VDC consulting firm, so got to work with so many different clients at different capacities, from setting up BIM standards to being knee deep in the modeling or just doing the management side of things for the BIM aspects, and just educating folks because BIM may be three letters, but it means so much more. And
Oh
so
yes.
there are still folks that unfortunately think BIM equals Revit, Revit equals BIM, which is not true. And so Revit is a tool, BIM is a process. And I just, this is where the conversation starts and it turns into an
Yep.
iceberg of a conversation, right?
Oh yeah. We can get way down in the weeds on that one.
Yep. And then from there, now I'm at a mechanical contracting firm. So same industry, different sides of the dodecahedron, if anything. And I'm actually glad I'm bouncing around from different aspects of the industry because when we're siloed into, at least this is my view anyway, when we're siloed into one path and one aspect of the industry, we don't see what everybody else is doing. And we end up not seeing the holistic approach as to why our process is the way it is. And so the learning lessons in one side of the industry may not even be known in a different side of the industry. So we're able to help cross pollinate and kind of work together and hopefully get to the finish line. But I feel like the finish line keeps getting pushed out every so often.
Yeah. Kind of like deadlines and yeah, and like
Yeah.
project tasks.
Yeah. And just something as simple as convincing people not to use a 3D tool for a 2D output, trying to let's come away from that and try to stay in the 3D space and go beyond it, then go backwards. That conversation seems to be reoccurring with many folks that I come across, but I think we're going in the right direction. In the last 10 years, I've seen it's, 4 steps forward, 3 steps back, but we're still moving forward. Oh, you're muted.
There you go. Occasionally, you get the person who was part of, you're in a coordination meeting, and the one guy comes with CAD drawings, and everyone's like, oh, can you is it 3D CAD? Nope, it's 2D. And then now you're forced to either model what he has to coordinate what you're doing, or like kind of it's. And I think that's the two steps back that we take is,
Mhm.
some jobs require BIM. Some states, even like Wisconsin, I know they're requiring BIM on a lot of projects,
Nice.
which is awesome, right? Because then you start getting into hopefully 3D state submittals. That's I have a vision that one day we'll be able to submit a model version to state and be like, yes, version 22, you were building. Here's the mark. You know, dreams are dreams. We'll see if it ever happens. But yeah, what you're saying is correct. Like we go so far, all these plugins, all the software's coming out, even workflows, people developing code and scripts in Dynamo and Python and everything else that talks to Revit or talks to a third party that reflects on Revit, or fabricating from a model directly to a saw. There's a lot of things out there that makes me think like, holy crap, we take a lot for granted. I'm
Hmm.
literally going to take this thing here, and I'm going to send it to that saw. It's going to cut it automatically, and some guy's just going to slap it together.
Yep.
And like, to me, that was an everyday thing. But to someone who's never seen that, that's like mind blowing. I talked to a guy
Hmm.
in robotics, and I tried to follow along, and then I quit really quick. But I listened to what he was saying about these robotics, and it's like I can't follow anything you're saying. But what it sounds like is iRobot is going to happen. They're going to take over the world. Terminator's a thing. AI is great, but it's also going to help. And so, no, I think everything that's happening is good. It's just when you come across the the project you're in, and not everyone's on the same level, or
Mhm.
um, even there's this brand new product comes out, and there's always people out there being like, no, that's not going to work, or God forbid someone says we've always done it this way.
Mhm.
That really puts a damper on things when you're trying to implement.
I
What?
think one thing that we're also missing, sorry to interrupt,
Go ahead.
is when we're working on large projects where so many stakeholders are involved, the smaller companies, and when I say smaller, in comparison to the large companies that are spending millions, if not billions of dollars on their projects,
Mm-hmm.
the contractors that are involved in the projects, they have more experience on the BIM and BDC side than the client themselves. And so the client is asking for it and we're giving it to them, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to track it. And I'm not saying everybody. There are some really sophisticated clients out there that they know everything and they can call the shots. They've got the standards. They've got the right people in place. But there are some who are still not there yet. And I found that, like you said, implementation, that person from their side that actually knows what they're doing and not just putting somebody in that seat of BIM manager, who's actually a CAD manager putting in a BIM manager seat. There's a huge difference in knowledge that's necessary to be able to successfully accomplish their initial goals. There's one project I saw where clash detection takes place, but it's screenshots placed onto PowerPoint, and PowerPoint is distributed to everybody. So for the novice person who's listening to this, they're probably like, yeah, what's the big deal? Oh, when you get into the project, when there's thousands and thousands of issues, that's a big deal because there's no way to track where that is, which building, which zone, which level, which, grid crossing, but then accountability.
Yep.
Who is responsible for taking care of it? Okay, you gave it to maybe the right person, but how do you keep track? So there's so much more to this than just modeling or just saying, hey, here's an issue, figure it out. But we have to be able to track it and then loop it with something else that may take place down the line if they don't fix it properly initially, and that communication that takes place. So from the client side, they don't think of it as a big deal because they don't have anybody to explain it
Right.
to them.
Right.
Whereas the contractors are like, okay, we can do this, but we need somebody from your side to be with us too and hold us accountable. And so when we provide you with the product that you're asking for, you know what to do with it after the fact. And so there was somebody I met back in October at a networking event, and she said, we've been asking for BIM for years, and we have all these models. We just don't know what to do with it now. So being able to understand the next step, which from the sophisticated client side, they were able to ask for it. They know what they're getting, but they don't know what to do with it next. So they don't have anybody internally to deal with that. So I feel
Right.
like there's that missing puzzle piece that'll bring everybody together, or the center of the spider web, whatever the analogy should be. But I'm going to constantly gripe about it until I finally see it happen. It might be a
Keep
few
going.
more years out.
This is a place to grip, safe space. Keep just let it out. I
Love
know.
it. Thank you.
I know. Uh, the thing, if clients are listening out there, the thing you got to think about, like when you took that clash detection, let's say it's from a third party, you notice with your Ritso, and you put it on a PDF or a presentation, you disconnected the workflow. And the thing about BIM is everything is connected. The information is driven and then followed through as the project goes along. I used to, because I used to do shop drawings all the time for Modular Factory, and what I would always say is like, as soon as I print this PDF, we're out of date, right? And I kind of push that along, and no one's like, well, if you print it, we'll build it. We're not out of date. I'm like, let me give you access to the sheets so that when I publish or when I finish or when I update, you get that immediately, and you will always be up to date. Um, and there's that kind of mindset that I think people have to start looking into. Like, you've been around for a while, you're still in CAD, you want to get into Revit, you want to start bidding for these projects that are requiring BIM. You got to get a mindset of, okay, we're going to put our trust in tech. We have to invest in the right BIM team. We have to invest in the right BIM manager to lead that team. You know, you gotta find someone who is got ambition. Abarna.
Hmm.
Like you got to have someone who has ambition, who really wants to take the reins and go for it. One thing I did want to talk about real quick is I love your story about not knowing what you wanted to do out of high school, because I bet you there's a bazillion people out there that can relate with that, and they all apply to something because they think they have to go and do this thing, right? Um, Funny story. I actually went to college right out of high school to go be a teacher as well for math and Spanish. Obviously, that didn't work out very well. But full circle, I am training now. That's what my job is now, is training in education. So I love it. I love it. But yeah, I think you had a very similar problem that probably most of high school people face. Like if you ask any 18-year-old what they want to do for the rest of their life, I mean, I didn't find my career till I was 28 and didn't realize what I was doing until I was 30. So I was running this BIM department. I was BIM manager. I was doing all these coordinations and setting up standards and all this stuff. I had no clue I was doing BIM until I got into a different area. Like you said, you got a different job. You got to see the other side. I got more networking. I was like, holy crap! There's a whole community for this.
Hmm.
I was in a room doing it, but like now that I can go out and meet people and network, like this is insane. And then you start posting on LinkedIn. You see like-minded people.
Yep.
You meet people like you, and I think what you're doing now, which let's talk about that, is women in BIM. I think what you're doing is so inspirational and great for the younger generation, the young women that don't know what they want to do. And I think when people think construction or anything like that, they don't think technology or BIM. They don't think organization. They don't think development. They don't think
Hmm.
VR headsets. They don't think templates. And so math is a great transition in BIM. When you get into developing, that's also another great transition. And
Hmm.
if you like fiddling with stuff, engineering, obviously, great transition. You may have not enjoyed it, but it got you to where you're at today. So let's let's talk about women in BIM. I want to hear how you got involved and then how it's growing. I really want to hear about that.
So, Women in BIM is actually a not for profit organization that initially started in the UK. It's two sisters that actually started it. One sister was in the UK, the other one was in Australia. The sister that was in the UK, she moved back to Australia, and they just grew it from there. It is now, I actually lost track of how many countries it's in. I think it's in like 70 different countries all around the world. Obviously, predominantly in countries that utilize BIM. So you'll find a lot more members in the UK, for example, and in Singapore, for example, Canada, USA, you name it. And so back in I want to say 2021, I still don't remember how, but I came across a webinar. It was presented by Women in BIM, and one of my previous bosses was actually a speaker. She wasn't my boss at the time. She was just a fellow coworker in a different department, but she was one of the speakers. And so I attended it. It was great, fantastic topic. And that was that. Never heard of it since. When I was in Canada, I used to volunteer for a lot of different organizations. And after moving to the US and COVID happening, I couldn't volunteer and I started getting antsy. And I thought, okay, I want to get back out there. I want to do some volunteering, give back to the community because it was fun. I got to gain so many soft skills through volunteering that I couldn't have gained at work. And so I attended a conference with a couple of my colleagues here in Phoenix, where I was watching a couple panels, and there were some inspirational speakers there. So at the end of any panel, you usually ask questions. So one of the questions I asked was, I'm looking, I'm new to Phoenix. I'm looking for groups that I could potentially join, but I haven't found anything that I gravitate to. What are your recommendations when it comes to trying to find something? Like, are there tools out there? Are there platforms out there? Are there other groups out there that we need to attend to be able to be exposed to these groups? And she said, start your own. And I thought, okay, that's a lot. Um, but start your own. And I thought, okay, well, we'll see. Again, I'm new here. I don't know anything. I don't know the
Yeah.
process. But it stayed in the back of my mind. And several months later, I came across Women in BIM again on LinkedIn. There was a poster that I saw, and then I went to the website. I finally went to the website. I don't know why I didn't do it earlier. And then I came across the portal for regional lead, and it said If if you don't have a chapter in your region, reach out to us at this email and let's get you started. So I did. I took that person's advice. I emailed Women in BIM and I asked, there's no chapter in Arizona. I'd like to start one for the Phoenix Metro. It was granted. And so from there, I got to connect with our North American coordinator. And once she included me on the monthly calls, I got to network with so many other leads across the continent. And we haven't turned back. Every month, at least for quite some time, every month we try to have at least one in-person event or one virtual event. So that was, I think, September of 2022 is when I finally joined and started the Phoenix chapter. December, I held the very first in-person event, and most of the folks that came never heard of Women in BIM. Right then and there, they joined the chapter. And the funny thing was, they said, I didn't see the ad for this event, but it was all my male colleagues that saw it and told me to come. And so I'm so happy that they saw that because although we're called Women in BIM, we're not always exclusive to Women in BIM. Our goal is to help enrich various careers and provide different resources to folks to just kind of give a different perspective. But it doesn't mean men are not allowed to come. Men are our allies at the end of the day, right? So it was really nice to see that. From there, we realized, depending on what city you live in, geography sucks. It's a long drive for a lot of people, especially after work. They're exhausted already from a long day of work and now having to drive potentially 45 minutes to the other side of town. And so that's when we realized, okay, it's time to start having more virtual events. And so now what we do is when we have our monthly calls, we have something called a third Thursday. So the third Thursday of every month, we do have a virtual drop-in, 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. Yeah. And it's about a different topic. So we actually had this month's third Thursday earlier today, and it was about motivation. It's not specific to women, but it's just motivation. And so we try to have different topics like that. We've talked about job descriptions, we've talked about negotiation skills, we've talked about so many different things just to kind of give a different perspective and share our experiences with one another, kind of like a roundtable talk, if you will. And then we started noticing members from different countries showing up. There was one webinar we had 200 people from about 100 different countries sign up to attend. Yeah, it was so exciting to see that. And, middle of the night for some folks, and they still managed to set an alarm and join in on the conversation. So we started to see that these are topics that are being looked for. It seems like we need more of a platform to talk about these things, and they're not huge topics, right? Like motivation is not that huge, but just being able to say, how do you motivate yourself, and how do I motivate myself? Sometimes the opposite works too, or just adding that extra thing also works. And so it makes being part of this organization that much more fulfilling, to be able to see that small little thing makes all the difference in the world. And even something as simple as one of the folks in Women in BIM, she was looking to get a promotion. She saw a different opportunity at her firm, but she's just coming out of maternity leave. And her current boss found out and said, what can we do to hang on to you? We love you. We want to hang on to you. So she's like, I don't know what to do. This is really, it's so much to take in. Like, I got to put my kid in daycare, and this new job, it's like longer hours. I'm going to be at work more frequently than remote. And wasn't sure what to do. And we just happened to have that negotiation conversation. So the negotiation was, see if your company will subsidize daycare plus a bump.
Right.
And it worked.
Wow.
It was a one-off situation. Obviously, it's not in the company policy, but they wanted her that much that they were able to agree with her that, yeah, we'll subsidize your daycare for your child so that your child can be closer to work. That way we have your full attention when you're with us, or as much of your attention as we can, and you're happy to stay with us, not begrudgingly staying with us.
Mm-hmm.
So something as simple as that, like we don't really think about, hey, would you be willing to, subsidize childcare? Normally it's, I want 50 grand more, like all these other general things
Right.
that we ask for. But this is
Mm-hmm.
something different, and the company realized this is important to you. We need to customize how we make you happy so that we can hang on to you. And so I think that might be the new trend. I hope that's the new trend for really valuable employees, where employers realize that they need to personalize their approach in hanging on to their people, because it shows they're paying attention to you.
Yep.
You're not just a number, you're a person in a valuable seat, a valuable person in a valuable seat. And just to think that it came from one simple women in BIM conversation, um, makes it that much more worthwhile to be part of it and continue to strive and just get the word out there. Even if it's, two new people that join after talking to 20 different people, that's still a win.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. I love that story, especially now. I mean, we're kind of in a market where every BIM modeler is pretty needed because everyone has a job position and they're hard to keep. Um, but I agree with you. I think companies need to start looking at the motivation of the individual, rather than the standard corporate motivation of here's your 2% raise, stick around. Some people it's status, some people it's raise, some people it's I want to work a 4-day week. And so um, I think that's a great point for everyone. Is especially if you're an owner out there, find the motivations of your individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do they want more on their plate? Do they want less on their plate? Do they enjoy what they're doing? Do they have to move into a different department? And I think that's important for not only them to understand, but the individual. For the
Mm-hmm.
guys out there listening, women out there listening, you know, make sure you know what motivates you and express your motivations to the person who's signing the checks, or who's the manager. What motivates you to keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I'll put a
as
little twist on that
Go
too,
ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
which is kind of the opposite. Sometimes some companies, they're very ambitious and they want to give you the opportunity right away. But then the person receiving it might be like, I'm not ready. This is, especially in the BIM space. Here's a perfect example: giving a BIM manager seat to a BIM modeler. They jump or run, but there's a huge learning curve. Now, depending on the complexity of projects, in some instances, yeah, you know what? Roll with the punches. They can probably make it work, especially if they're very, very ambitious. But the larger the company, the harder it's going to be for that to happen, and the more people that get affected by it. But when that opportunity comes, it's good to be honest about it, to be like, I still have a lot of learning to do. But what I usually recommend to folks is, it doesn't matter, man or woman, don't say no right off the bat. Don't say yes right off the bat if you don't feel like you're more than 50% qualified. Be like, not yet. How about we put a timeline to it? Would you consider, that's a phrase that I learned at a Women in Construction conference last year, which is put the ball in your manager's court and have it as a conversation. It's, would you consider sponsoring me to get some formal education so that I can gain the experience to get into the seat in 6 months or a year, whatever it is, and then finally fulfill that seat? Because there's so many companies out there that can partner with you for whatever denomination, to be able to educate that person to get to where they need to go. And so, um, not blocking it, but admitting that there's a learning curve. I think that too can potentially create a stronger bridge between the employer and the employee, or manager and teammate, whatever it may be. But having that open conversation could also be very beneficial for both parties.
100%. I've actually been in that situation before where at the time I maybe had a month of Revit experience. And I say a month because that's what the only time they gave me during school. Like when I went, I had to learn hand drafting and I had to learn 3ds Max and Revit and CAD and 3D CAD and Inventor. Like it was just a plethora of software, specialize in none of them, just know what they are. And I was told, like, how fast can you get them in Revit? I got a month of experience in it. Like, you got to give me some time, 2 weeks maybe, like to maybe scratch the surface. Um, and I think being honest up front about things like that, especially even like mistakes that happen, that's another thing. And I don't know, this is not even BIM related. Like, if you fess up to a mistake real quick, there's more time to fix or resolve the issue. That's going to be less of an issue if you wait. Uh, Particularly, I was in the modular factory, and once it starts, it doesn't stop. It's like a freight train. You can't just stop the line. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars not moving. And so sometimes the wrong window will be put in the wrong package, and they build the wrong window and it's down the line and finish. And so when something like that happens, that's something that I expressed as a manager was like, look, tell me what's wrong. We're going to go fix the issue right away. We're going to fix it together. And then we're going to talk about how we're not going to do that. Right. And, and that's what it was. It's mistakes happen every day. So you'd go down there, you got to confront the guy and be like, yeah, by the way, I know you built this wall here. It's wrong. It's all the way in there on the plant. You got to fix it. What can I do in the BIM department to help you right now with that issue? And I think that's also another thing is field communication. And so helping them with that communication, they would no longer bring mistakes to me, but bring the mistakes right to the person and right to the source, which I had a little proud papa moment when that happened, because it felt like they really grew and they understood. But yeah, I think there's a lot to take in when you're talking about, I want you to put these in this role, and you got to be like, okay, to be honest with you, like I can do it, but maybe not right now. Or maybe if you give you some time to research, and they're like, yeah, cool, all the time you need. More than likely, it's just a conversation to be had with that upper management or employer.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more than happy to help out because they want you to succeed because they hired you to make their business better. So,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's awesome. I love that advice. Thank you, Abarna. So, if you had some advice to give some of these young women about BIM, or if they don't know what they do out of high school, or how to say that construction's not BIM, what would you say to them? What would you say to these girls?
There's a couple of things actually, and I'm gonna,
Mm-hmm.
collective knowledge that I gained over the years through no longer applicable methods. So, for example, it was a newspaper article years and years ago when they were still a thing, which basically talked about kind of the same thing in terms of what avenue do you take for what type of career you want to attain. And so it was kind of going through college versus university. The tools that require a more theoretical approach, the doctors of the world, the dentists, the lawyers, the engineers, it is better to go the university route. But the more creative approaches, the artists of the world, the carpenters, the BIM designers, would go the college route because they're more hands-on. I wish I knew this when I was a lot younger, because I was always a hands-on person. I like to be able to dig into it and figure it out. Textbooks and I don't get along. Never did, never will.
Same.
And so I wish I read that article or had somebody tell me that. And I would have probably at least taken, and I'm going to botch this word, the baccalaureate experience, which is
Yeah.
partial college, partial university. And so you're getting the practical experience and the theoretical. So for those that are in their latter years of high school, I think the first thing I would say is reflect on your current, I don't want to say skill sets. It's like the things you enjoy doing, just in general. What do you enjoy doing? Are you more of I want to research in the textbook and find the answer? Or, you know what, let me dig into it and you're actually putting things together, or you're on the computer and you're problem solving. From there, I think then it's, I don't know what the career counselors, is that the right one?
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
High schools here have them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like talking to them in terms of general streams. So what I did when I was in my muddled path of trying to figure out where I wanted to go, I knew the school I wanted to go to, but I just wasn't sure which program. So I started following the individual So it's like the university of whatever, but they had like school of engineering, school of
Yep.
business, school of this, school of that. So I started looking into those individual ones, started reading their various programs and the curricula associated with each, and just kind of trying to see what stood out to me. Engineering, I already knew I didn't want to do that. Business bores me. Sciences, mm-mm. Arts or like the social work aspect of things, it's people oriented, but no. And so like I started knocking them out one at a time, and then I started going into the ones that had the subjects that I enjoyed. So I enjoyed the math. I enjoyed the graphic design. I enjoyed the artistic approach and like the labs where you're actually working with people in a group setting. I don't test well, so things that required less testing but more like assignments, those kind of things. And so that's how I was able to figure out my way to get into architectural technology, because it had a little bit of everything that I enjoyed. Sure, I've never heard of AutoCAD prior to that or Revit prior to that, but everything else made sense. Making models of houses to scale. Okay, cool. I'm very hands-on. I'll measure things out, working with balsa wood and, using cement and all these things. That was fun. Doing site walks, loved it. So just kind of breaking it down course by course is what made me realize, okay, this is the stream I'm going to follow. I don't know what's next, but this is what I'm going to do. But then I also very quickly realized, at least in my personal experience, trying to carve out a path for myself just wasn't going to happen. I'll think path A is going to work. Life laughs at me and says, nope, not even B, not even C, you're going to N. And it just throws me in a different way. No matter how hard I tried to stick to A, it just kept pulling me into the M side. And so I realized, you know what? Leave the doors open. Leave the doors open. Whatever opportunity comes, evaluate it. And then if it sounds good, but you're afraid, take a leap of faith and have a good support network around you. So high schoolers, your mom, your dad, your siblings, mentor, teachers, there's some fantastic humans out there that have lived. They've had a very, I'm going to use the word interesting life, where they've been able to learn a lot and can potentially share some valuable advice on, like my parents did. We don't know what it's like to be a teacher in Canada, but we know somebody who has gone that path. Let's go talk to them
Yep.
before we make this huge financial commitment. The next 4 to 5 years of your life that you may or may not enjoy. So I'm so grateful that they decided to do that. It was just a random little Saturday, but it made all the difference in the world. And so from that, after doing a little bit of research as early as possible, now network. Networking, I feel like, is the better way to find the better opportunities than it is the traditional way of just applying for jobs. Because the younger you are, the less experience that you have in terms of applying for positions. And so knowing the right people, or just knowing people in the industry, just asking them questions of, hey, what do you do? And then just kind of being able to receive that information that's hopefully not overcomplicated, simplified for them for in layman's terms, and then being able to be like, okay, you know what, that sounds interesting, and then kind of going into that aspect of things. Or one geeky thing I did was, well before I graduated from post-secondary, is I went to a career fair. I told each and every company that came, hey, I'm not graduating anytime soon, but in a year I will be. What skill sets do you need for your ideal person that you would want to hire? And so I got this really interesting list of skill sets that each company wanted. So there were general contractors that were there, architectural firms that were there, engineering firms that were there, and each one wanted a different set of skill sets, which was fascinating because the architectural side, they didn't say they wanted somebody who had the drafting abilities or knew certain software. They said, we need somebody who knows building science. So the environmental aspect of things. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. The construction, obviously, some level of construction knowledge, not experience, but have you cracked open a book and looked at a framing plan, and can you name the different types of studs that are behind a wall? Something as simple as that. Or are you willing to open up a book while you're on the, working with us in the office space and willing to ask questions? And so they started sharing a different side well beyond the job description that we would find on their website, which was really interesting. And then I started to focus in on things that I found interesting. And again, life threw me in a different direction because I applied to these companies eventually thinking I'll apply in December, I'm graduating in April. That's when they start looking for people to start in May. Nothing worked. It was this other company who was like, hey, we saw your Revit skills. We need that. Nobody else told me about Revit. So just being able to talk to different people and getting a different perspective definitely works. And one thing that I advise people not to do is if you're on LinkedIn and you do want to network with people, and this is a pet peeve of mine, so I'm hoping this doesn't cross anybody else's. If others are okay with it, great, but not for me. Please don't, reach out and say, "Hey, are you hiring?" I don't know who you are, don't know your background, don't know your skill sets. Don't just jump right in. Introduce yourself to me. Tell me what you did. Let me get to know you so that I remember you. And I'll be honest with you at that time. Do I have a position open? Do I not? But if I don't right now, I might remember you in 6 months or 2 months or 2 weeks and say, oh, wait, somebody did reach out to me and I'm looking for a person like that. I can reach out to them and be like, hey, an opening is here. Based on what you told me, you might find this very interesting. Here you go. As opposed to, hey, are you hiring? And I don't even know your name beyond just reading it. So I would advise folks not to do that, but more of a create a connection. And attending webinars, seminars. Sometimes there's companies out there that do demonstrations, attend those, ask questions. Back in 2014, 2015, I attended an evening seminar that representatives from Autodesk came, and that's the first time I came across VR. They scanned the whole city, and you got to fly through the city through a VR set. And I thought, I didn't even know that was possible. But that became because of BIM. They said, we're integrating this into the BIM space. Who knew?
Yep.
Attending, I'm going to use this opportunity to plug Autodesk University.
Go for
It's
it.
free to attend. It was mind blowing when, especially their general sessions in the beginning. I saw one where Disney was basically showcasing how they used Revit to create the castle in Tokyo and how they utilized so many different plugins to do different things to ultimately create this awesome structure and save so much time and effort and money because they did all the analyses that they needed to do. And it was free to watch. I got to geek out. I got to share that knowledge with my coworkers. And to this day, I'm still sharing it. And people are like, what? Disney uses Revit? What? And so things like that, it all adds up. I mean, my own career, everything that I've done so far, no matter which direction it took me in, it's been adding up to get me to where I am now. Who knows where I'm going to be 15 years down the line? Will I go back into teaching? I don't know. But I like to leave that door open. And I think keeping that open-mindedness is the last thing I'm going to recommend to those that are graduating from high school, currently in post-secondary, or just stuck. Be open-minded. Allow the opportunities to come your way. Obviously, try. Don't just sit there and be like, it's going to come. No, try. Continue to grow, and the right opportunity will come at the right time, and you'll think, you know what? This is why I waited so long to try and figure out what I'm doing with my life, because I wasn't ready for that opportunity at the time I wanted it to happen. And so it's all coming together at the right time to grow beautifully into whatever the amazing path that they're going to have. Like, nobody's going to have the same path as me. I'm never going to have the same path as somebody else that's ahead of me and paved the way. So we all have a unique experience, and comparing is probably going to be the most detrimental to all of us. And you and me, we started our careers in our late 20s, mid to late 20s. So it's okay to not know what you're going to do, and take a break if you have to. I mean, it's okay.
if you're listening right now and you're listening to this because you know Abarna and women in BIM and you're trying to figure out what career to go in, Google BIM, Google digital construction, and maybe work your way that way too. That's one thing that I wish I knew about. Like we had a CAD class in high school and I took it and it was all isometric CAD with just the keyboard, no mouse. And it was awesome. I loved it. But I didn't know what BIM was. I had no idea digital construction was a thing. I didn't know that you're going to tell me, yeah, I'm going to work on a stadium. You're going to do all the MVP for the stadium and look at structure. And by the way, put a VR lens on, walk through it. Like there's exciting things like that that I think once you're in the industry, you really get excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Even uh, Tesla uses all kinds of software and BIM and things like that. They're using Revit for their facilities, and so imagine you're on a project with Revit and you get to walk through it and you get to see the manufacturing shop before it goes in. Like I love cars, so that's awesome. Um, if you think about it, every building probably from here on forward had some form of 3D in it that you're coordinating, and someone had to walk through it either through Revit. VR is becoming more and more kind of like a staple with a lot of like, I'm going to show you what this looks like. I remember, so Revit has these free panorama renders you can do in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can attach a QR code to it, and basically it's a still 360 photo or render of your building. And so I would have those on my drawings for like finished cabinets, or when the mods had to come together and you had spaces in it. You send it and be like, hey, is this tight space? Can you fit down here and do it? And he can look on his phone across the country because he's not installing it yet and say, yeah, no, that works. Or no, I need more space. So definitely look into BIM digital construction if you're still not sure what you want to do, because it's full of problem solving, troubleshooting, puzzles, and technology. And so it's a great opportunity. Barna, I want to thank you for joining me today. How can people reach you if they want to get into women in BIM or get in touch with you?
A couple different ways. If it's Women in BIM, you can go directly to the website and reach out to, I think it's info@womeninbim.org. Don't quote me on that. It's definitely on the website. It goes directly to our co-founders, and then from there, they will disperse it to the appropriate people. To contact me, LinkedIn is probably the best way. My first and last name, do a quick search and you'll find me, hopefully. But otherwise, Alex, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really honored to be on your podcast and really looking forward to seeing it kind of explode and being awesome in our industry.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. I do appreciate it. And
Thank you.
listeners, if you like the conversations happening, feel free to like, subscribe, and follow Strive or Strive Summit Podcast on all the socials.